What if I told you the ancient world's most terrifying war machine, the battle elephant, wasn't defeated by strength, but by something almost invisible? This is The War Historian, where military myths are shattered and battlefield secrets uncovered. And nothing is ever as simple as it looks. Tonight, you'll discover how war elephants, once the ultimate symbol of unstoppable power, vanished not just because of better weapons, but because of a self-reinforcing logic that turned their own strengths into liabilities. Picture this. The ground shakes. It's October 1st, 331 BCE. Alexander the Great stares down Darius III at Gaugamela. Out of the swirling Persian line, thunderous shapes emerge. Elephants. Soldiers freeze. Horses panic. Even the air feels electric with dread. One animal, enormous, armored, and utterly unpredictable, can shatter formations built by human hands. Not just myth. This happened. Across India, into the Middle East, and all the way to Carthage, armies believed whoever controlled these living battering rams controlled the future. Take Chandragupta Maurya, the first emperor to unite most of the Indian subcontinent. Around 320 BCE, legend says his stables housed thousands of elephants. Imagine the cost, the scale, the arrogance of such power. The idea that you could buy victory, feed it, train it, and then unleash it. For centuries, infantry trembled, cavalry scattered, and generals plotted how to steal or sabotage these creatures. Every elephant carried not just soldiers, but hope, reputation, and terror. But there's a problem. The downfall of war elephants isn't as simple as the arrival of gunpowder or cannons. Not even close. Fast forward to 202 BCE, the plains of Zama. Hannibal, Carthage's greatest mind, unleashes armored elephants to break Roman lines. Rome, though, isn't the same Rome as a century ago. This Rome adapts. They open the ranks and create corridors, turning elephants into confused, stampeding liabilities instead of assets. The truth is, elephants didn't lose because someone built a better weapon. They lost because the enemy learned how to play the elephant's own game against them. Zoom out. It's not about one battle or one empire. This is a feedback loop. Every time elephants tear through infantry, armies learn new tactics, false retreats, missiles aimed at sensitive spots, even psychological warfare. Elephants force progress, but their existence creates their own undoing. Economically, it gets even stranger. Feeding, training, and housing elephants bankrupts small kingdoms and concentrates wealth in the hands of rulers and specialists. When the elephants start to fail, whole social orders collapse, military doctrine pivots, and the elephant keepers become irrelevant overnight. It's like a chess piece so powerful it distorts the game, until, suddenly, every move makes it weaker. The queen starts to play, but the board itself transforms, and she ends up a pawn. Here's what happened next. As elephants become less terrifying, not only do armies adapt, but they begin to question whether the enormous investment is worth the uncertain outcome. The psychology flips. The same animal that once could win a battle with its presence becomes a target, a liability, a tool in the enemy's hands. Sometimes the smallest spark, panic, confusion, or a clever engineer, erupts into chaos that no amount of raw power can control. The ripple effects are huge. In the wake of the elephant's decline, empires change how they fight, how they recruit, even how they hand out privileges. Suddenly, innovation trumps brute force. Wealth shifts. No more feeding massive herds. No more channeling silver into ivory-lined chariots. War begins to reward flexibility, coordination, and anticipation. Values still prized in every modern army. Look at any system today, military, corporate, social, and you see echoes of this paradox. The very thing that brings success can undermine it, if the environment shifts. We want a single event, a spectacular defeat, a perfect weapon that finishes the beast. But the truth hides in complexity. The story of the war elephant is a detective puzzle, an ecological, psychological, and tactical feedback loop, full of paradox and unintended consequences. So what enabled elephants to dominate in the first place, and what flaw did their very success create? To solve the mystery, let's trace their rise, back to the moment when elephants first stomped onto the battlefield. The year is 326 BCE. Alexander the Great's men face an army not of men, but of elephants, at the banks of the Hydaspes. Imagine it. Rain on the river, the glint of spear points, horses stamping nervously as massive gray shapes move through the mist. Alexander's soldiers have fought Persians, Greeks, even Scythians, but nothing like this. They stare across the water at Porus's line, where dozens of war elephants, each armored, painted, towering, wait in silence. The ground vibrates. This is the beginning of a legend. Why elephants? In ancient India, everyone already knows. They are the ultimate symbol of kingship. They carry gods in temple processions. They're spoken of in the oldest texts as creatures of celestial power. By the 4th century BCE, kingdoms like Magadha and later the rising Mauryan Empire throw thousands into battle, with Chandragupta Maurya himself fielding, according to ancient sources, over 9,000 elephants. Think about that. 9,000 living tanks marching at the front lines. Empires bend around these beasts. The powerful do not ride horses, they ride elephants. But here's the truth. The elephant isn't just muscle. The mind behind this military innovation is psychological shock. It's chaos, weaponized. Imagine watching a line of these animals bearing down, smashing chariots, tossing men aside, ignoring arrow storms. The psychological effect can't be understated. Soldiers whose languages you don't know, from towns you've never seen,
united only by terror, as formations buckle and break under the charge. Ancient writers describe panic sweeping through ranks as elephants trample men and beasts alike, their mere presence upending the battle's rhythm. If war is a card game, elephants are the ace. Pull it at the right moment, and everything changes. The innovation doesn't stop with fear. War leaders realize soon enough, elevation means power. Archers and spearmen climb onto elephant backs. Now you fight from above. Your arrows fly farther, your spears come down with deadly force. And underneath you, thousands of pounds of armor and hide shield you from the worst. Porus, king of Punjab, perfects this tactic. Seleucus I, ambitious founder of the Seleucid Empire, wins elephants as diplomatic gifts from India, around 303 BCE, then reorganizes his armies to use them. Fast forward to 218 BCE, Hannibal sets out with 37 elephants, crossing the deadly Alps to outmaneuver Rome. Each time, the beasts redefine what's possible. For a brief moment in history, the world pivots around them. But there's a problem. The bigger the ace, the harder it is to play. Feeding, training, moving, even calming these creatures in battle becomes a system-level headache. Empires must build entire new bureaucracies just to source fodder, train elephant drivers, set up medical teams. Only the richest can afford it, and sometimes, like in the aftermath of Alexander's campaigns, a leader inherits more elephants than his treasury can feed. Logistics now drive victory as much as tactics. A single beast guzzles hundreds of pounds of food daily. An army of elephants can starve in days if the supply lines waver. The truth is, most empires can't afford the risk. Here's what happened next. The trickle becomes a flood. After the Hydaspes, every power in the region wants the elephant ace. New spies, new treaties, new arms races break out across the ancient world. The Seleucids send their sons to Indian courts, hoping for secrets.
The Carthaginians train their own, desperate to match Rome. But with every new player enters new problems. Countermeasures appear, strategies shift, unpredictability multiplies. Suddenly, the thing that made you untouchable starts to make you vulnerable. There's a pattern here, one even the modern world recognizes. Technology becomes a system. Systems breed complexity, and soon only the biggest, richest, or most relentless survive. The war elephant launches a race so fierce it shapes the fate of empires for generations. But what happens when the rest of the world starts copying or countering the ace up your sleeve? The ground is shifting. Next, the arms race. Spies, imitators, and rivals race to unlock, defeat, or master the elephant's terrifying power. Suddenly, elephants aren't just Indian weapons. They're military currency, traded across the Mediterranean and Middle East. In a matter of decades, the innovation races out of India and surges into the arsenals of new empires. The Seleucid kings crave them, desperate not to fall behind. Hundreds of elephants travel west on perilous journeys, and soon the royal menageries of Ptolemaic Egypt and the war camps of Carthage echo with unfamiliar trumpeting. Whoever controls the biggest, wildest, most terrifying beasts owns the edge. At Raphia, in 217 BCE, two armies clash under the desert sun. Antiochus III versus Ptolemy IV. 73 Asian elephants on one side, 73 African on the other. Massive towers sway atop wrinkled backs. Archers ready bows, javelin throwers grip their spears, sweating on wooden platforms lashed to tusked backs 5 tons heavy. In the space between, the earth groans. Everyone's watching, waiting, desperate to see which side cracks first. At Raphia, the animals fight each other, scream in panic, trample their own men. It's not a clean technology. It's a living chaos engine. And once Carthage joins the race, bringing North African elephants across the sea, the whole system spirals. The competition turns feverish. Elephants become not just weapons, but symbolic chips in a brutal Mediterranean arms race. History is about to shift gears. When you field elephants, you force your enemy to adapt or die. The Romans? They adapt with a vengeance. They invent anti-elephant wagons, spikes, fire, wheels made to shatter animal nerves. At Cynocephali in 197 BCE, Roman infantry works out a system. They dodge and jab, swarm and harass, isolating elephants to make them thrash in blind terror. But that's just the beginning. Someone remembers pigs. They douse swine in pitch, set them alight, and release them squealing toward elephant lines. The sound and scent alone enough to shake the mightiest gray leviathan. Others try driving horns and trumpets directly at the beast's sensitive ears. The logic is as ruthless as any software update. Every new enemy patch breeds its own exploit. The elephants are forced to evolve. Better armor, heavier towers, spike-tipped tusks, iron-studded forehead plates. The crew riding in the howdah now looks more like a fortress than a hunting party, javelins and bows bristling from their perches. The show of force is breathtaking. But with every layer of complexity, the system bends under new stress. Here's what happened next. Catching and training a 5-ton wild animal isn't like forging a spear. The Seleucids send hunters and armed caravans as far as modern-day Sudan and Eritrea, tracking herds across hundreds of miles, risking tribal war
and the death of every handler. African and Asian elephants move differently, respond differently to pain, and break differently under pressure. Which do you breed? Which do you trust with the charge? The Ptolemaic kings, perched in Alexandria and Memphis, weaponized geography. They lock down Red Sea ports and control the trade. No one gets elephants for war without their say-so. Just imagine the scale. It's not just metal and fodder. It's an empire's logistical heartbeat. And then, creeping in behind the spectacle, comes fragility. The more you invest, the more you risk. Think of a modern data center. One sabotage, the whole network shudders. Armies of the Hellenistic age discover the peril of elephant warfare isn't just the carnage. It's supply chains stretched to breaking, temperamental animals snapping when their drivers fall. The shocking cost in silver and human life just to keep beasts fed and ready. Who can afford to lose one animal, let alone 20, in a single hour? Rulers gamble everything for battlefield spectacle, and every rival doubles down. By the end of the 3rd century BCE, the war elephant's shadow falls over every major conflict from Spain to Persia. The question isn't who can master the elephant, but how much chaos can your system survive before it breaks apart? Sometimes we find the same pattern in today's arms races. A weapon so dazzling everyone must have it, until nobody can handle the cost of keeping it. The truth is, with each patch and workaround, the whole war elephant system loads itself up with vulnerabilities. So what push finally made the elephant system crack? And who saw it coming? The tipping point comes not in a distant jungle, but during a brutal clash of empires. History pivots at a single battle. 216 BCE, the smoke clears at the Battle of Zama. Scipio's Roman infantry stands, while Hannibal's elephants trample friend and foe alike. You picture the field. Hooves, tusks, panicked men scattering in every direction. Hannibal, the genius general, pins his hopes on beasts bred for terror. But this time, something's different. The Roman line doesn't break, but bends. Disciplined arms creating lanes. Steel points glint in the haze as legionaries stand shoulder to shoulder, then step aside in coordinated rhythm, opening wide corridors in the ranks. And in that moment, one you can almost hear, the rumbling crescendo of elephant feet. The catastrophe unfolds. Huge animals stampede right through, untouched by spears. They expect a wall. They find gaps. Confused, they keep charging, and soon chaos reigns. Not in the Roman formation, but among Hannibal's own troops behind. An army weapon turned into a wrecking ball for the wrong team. This is 202 BCE. It's the tipping point where elephants, once the ultimate ground shakers of war, become unpredictable missiles, more danger to their own than to the enemy. It's easy to forget just how terrifying these animals once were. Before Zama, put yourself at the front lines. Tens of tons rushing under armored plates, the thunder of trunks and tusks, soldiers scattering. In the earliest battles, from Gaugamela to Ipsus, elephants ripped gaps in enemy ranks, shattered morale, won world-changing victories. They haunted the edges of maps and nightmares. But after Zama, something cracks in the myth. Roman discipline isn't just about standing firm. It's about outthinking the charge, perfecting the open ranks tactic, so elephants pass through harmlessly. Soldiers, drilled in calm defiance, lose their fear. Leaders watching the carnage realize the truth. Elephants don't guarantee victory anymore. They're powerful, but they're wild, unpredictable. A hurricane redirected by clever levies. The storm still rages, but now it threatens the side that unleashes it. Here's what happened next. Not everyone gives up the dream right away. In Egypt, Ptolemy IV pours gold and manpower into building a new elephant corps, hoping to restore terror at Raphia in 217 BCE. The Seleucid kings, from Antiochus III onward, assemble huge stables of Indian and African elephants. Each ruler imagines the old magic will return. But there's a problem. The innovation of anti-elephant tactics spreads faster than the beasts themselves. Cost skyrockets. Trainers and keepers struggle to keep animals healthy and battle-ready. And when these massive investments meet Roman or Greek lines, the showy charge fizzles, sometimes ending with elephants bolting through their own infantry, crushing allies instead of enemies. Diminishing returns, escalating costs. The numbers tell the story. Armies train for the chaos, elephants deliver it, but not where the king hopes. The battlefield psychology flips. Once, the mere sound of elephants meant panic. Now, the enemy stands its ground. You see it at Magnesia, 190 BCE. Antiochus's elephants, unleashed to break the Roman left, lose control, smash through their own ranks, and scatter infantry in the wrong direction. The wildcard isn't just a tactical liability, it's psychological warfare reversed. Instead of sowing terror, the elephants become a lesson in holding firm. Soldiers learn, drill after drill, what to do. Hold formation. Step aside. Exploit the confusion. Even on the Indian subcontinent, the pattern repeats. Elephants routed their own side as often as the enemy, sometimes more. Leaders cling to old symbols. Armies march with a beast whose reputation now outweighs its actual battlefield impact. But if discipline neutralizes terror, why don't the great powers simply walk away? Why do empires keep pouring money and energy into this fading weapon? Here's the puzzle. Military systems lock into habits, behaviors, traditions, even when the reasons are out of date. Like some modern armies today, locked into aging war machines by budget and culture, ancient powers kept marching elephants not because they worked, but because letting go felt unthinkable. To change is to risk everything. The truth is, once the pattern shifts, from unstoppable force to dangerous liability, leaders find themselves stuck. Spectacle, tradition, fear, inertia, all conspire to keep the war elephant alive. If elephants lost their edge, why did armies cling to them for generations? What held them captive to this losing gamble? To understand why elephants lingered, and what replaced them, we have to see the machinery of military systems as they run today. Today, war elephants are museum relics, but their system logic lives on in everything from armored divisions to psychological warfare. Tanks rumble out of hangars, missiles streak across distant skies, and the world holds its breath, even now, for the next display of power. Strip away the chrome and circuitry, and you discover the same ancient idea moving beneath it all. A weapon isn't just a tool, it's a statement. Shock is as old as war, and every army since elephants vanished has hunted for its next incarnation. Take the muddy fields of the Somme in 1916, where the stench of fear and cordite filled the air. Soldiers waited in terror, hearts pounding, as an ungainly metal beast crested the trench line. The British Mark I tank. It was clumsy, slow, and often broke down, but the enemy's shot lines scattered for a reason no spreadsheet could fully explain. The tank didn't just kill, it shattered nerves. Those first tanks were in many ways modern war elephants. Their thunderous lumber, their shadows looming larger than life. These were psychological weapons as much as military ones. It didn't stop there. By 1945, tanks evolved into steel predators. T-34s and Shermans roared across Europe. Fast forward to 2023, and the world's militaries field over 50,000 tanks. Russia's T-14 Armata and America's M1 Abrams are poster children for shock. Their price tags can push over $10 million per unit. Their armor is engineered to survive infernos, and their crews are drilled to display strength in formation and fire. But here's the truth. Warfare is a contest of nerves long before it's a contest of firepower. Drones that scream overhead, fighter jets that break the sound barrier, precision-guided missiles that crash through distant skylines. Each is meticulously designed to intimidate as much as destroy. The logic repeats. Just as kings 2 millennia ago invested fortunes in towering war elephants, modern nations now chase ever more imposing machines. In 2023 alone, humanity spent a staggering $2.2 trillion on military strength. Imagine entire cities' worth of factories roaring with production lines, shipping containers stacked with components, software engineers writing code so missiles find their target half a world away. This is a system that feeds on its own momentum. An army builds 10 tanks. A rival must respond with 12. New missiles mean someone else is forced to develop countermeasures, and so the race drags on. Just like the arms race between India and Seleucid Persia, over the biggest, fiercest elephants. But there's a problem. The more a nation commits to these gigantic, expensive projects, the less it can afford to let go. Budgets spiral. Supply chains spiderweb across continents, and every politician wants to cut the ribbon at the latest tank unveiling. Economic inertia takes over. Jobs depend on the next military contract. Innovation is pushed not just by security needs, but by political showmanship. And soon, the system is hurtling forward with or without true necessity. Psychological dominance becomes habit, not just strategy. It's a loop with its own logic. Imagine a racetrack where every new car is faster, more armored, more complicated, until the corners of the track themselves start pushing even the most skillful drivers into the wall. That's where the system breaks down. Shock value isn't infinite. At some point, every new tank, every missile, every display loses a bit of its power. Drones that once terrified are countered by jamming equipment. The tank battalion that shook Warsaw-packed lines in the Cold War suddenly looks vulnerable to a cheap handheld rocket. And yet, the gears keep spinning. Military lobbying, national fears, and sheer organizational momentum keep the shock machines rolling forward, endlessly upgraded but never fundamentally different from the elephants of old. Technology evolves, but the logic underneath, build to impress, to overawe, to terrify, remains unchanged. Here's what happened next. Hidden in the background noise of national defense is a system where genuine necessity is just one player among many. Corporations lobby for contracts. Politicians crave spectacle. Whole economies hitch themselves to the next great war machine, whether or not it's needed, because the system rewards size, not wisdom. So who really gains from these cycles, and who pays the steepest price when the next shock weapon rolls out? To get to the real cost, we need to ask, who profits, suffers, and controls the new machinery of shock and awe? Behind every shock weapon, from elephant to tank, stands a hierarchy. Those who win, those who lose, and those trapped in illusion. The spotlight falls on armies with towering war elephants or gleaming armored columns. Yet, beneath the spectacle, power flows uphill. Who truly benefits from these marvels? If you walk into the royal stables of Seleucia around 200 BC, you witness the grandeur firsthand. Hundreds of elephants, imported from India at staggering cost, paraded before the court in iron-studded trappings. Seleucid emperors used these animals the way modern generals use missile parades. They broadcast dominion and stoke fear. Flash forward to today's world, and you find a similar dynamic in Pentagon budget cycles that circle endlessly. Billions poured into the latest tank designs, drone swarms, and wonder weapons. Their true purpose often less about battlefield outcomes than about the profits and prestige of those at the top. But here's the truth. The price falls heaviest on those below the spotlights. Imagine a young Carthaginian in 216 BC, taxed until his granary is empty so the state can acquire and feed elephants. He's told it serves Carthage, that the next battle requires shock and awe. Nearby, the beasts are restless, chained, destined to charge into lines of spears or flee in chaos. Fast forward again. It's the ordinary infantryman, expected to hold ground against tanks, or the taxpayer funding trillion-dollar upgrades in times of peace. The emperor wins glory, the generals secure their posts, the arms makers celebrate quarterly dividends. But soldiers, citizens, and even the animals themselves pay in blood, sweat, and futures spent. Now, look closer under the big top. Like a circus, the dazzling main event distracts the crowd. But it's the laborers wrangling animals, the riggers tightening ropes behind the curtains, who actually make the show happen. War is no different. The public sees an unstoppable elephant, an invincible tank, a next-generation missile, and believes in miracles. Rulers cultivate this illusion because it's useful. Hannibal's elephants become legends, while the logistical nightmares, feeding, training, moving 50-ton beasts across the Alps, fade from memory. In 218 BC, the real story is not the trumpeting charge, but the months of preparation, the starving animals, the exhausted handlers. It's the quiet power of adaptation, logistics, and morale that decides wars, not just wonder weapons rolling through city squares. Spectacle repeats. You discover the same game playing out every century. Fancy weapons arrive. They dominate for a while. Then the world adapts. In 202 BC, after Zama, Carthage's prized elephants, her pride, her expense, her myth, turn liability. Roman legionaries learn formation, discipline, and how to bait and neutralize the beasts. The empire slips from spectacle-reliant to substance-driven, and Carthage pays the price. An empire dissolves, not in a blaze of glory, but in the grind of shattered expectations and empty coffers. Jump ahead, and nations chasing unstoppable tech, bigger tanks, smarter drones, may find themselves brittle, burdened by the very machinery meant to guarantee safety. The system-level truth is stark. The arms races, ancient or modern, grow not from military necessity, but from structures that reward those above and cost those below. Budgets balloon, myths multiply. Most suffer, few profit. Is today really so different from antiquity, when a handful of elites commanded steel mammoths while thousands shivered in their shadow? The faces change, from king to CEO, but the machinery endures. You find the real drivers of fate in the margins, the silent grind of supplies, the resilience of human spirit, the ability to adapt when the main attraction falters. All this leads to a question that gnaws at the edges of history. Are we trapped in this closed circuit, condemned to repeat the mistakes of past empires because the structure itself rewards illusion and spectacle over substance? From the war elephant to the tank, the showmanship dazzles, but it's what happens under the canvas, unseen, uncelebrated, unacknowledged, that determines who survives and who vanishes. The answer lies in our final reckoning. What breaks the system? And what does history warn us about extinction? Here's the truth. Every war elephant, literal or metaphorical, carries its own extinction seed. The very power that dominates a battlefield also invites a counter, a crack, a moment when terror turns into vulnerability. Think about it. For centuries, elephants trampled armies, broke lines, inspired both awe and panic. In 218 BCE, when Hannibal led his herd of elephants through the icy Alps, Rome shook. No one had seen terror like that. Soldiers dropped their weapons and ran. Legacies were made in those elephantine footsteps. But here's what happened next. The very spectacle that once ensured victory planted the beginning of the end. As soon as Roman tacticians witnessed the carnage, the entire machine of war started adapting. Spears lengthened, formations tightened, trumpets and fire drove herds into chaos. You see, the pursuit of decisive, overwhelming force, those weapons that make the enemy's heart sink, always triggers a race. Innovation versus adaptation. Suddenly, what was once unbreakable doesn't just fracture, it dissolves. Take the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. Scipio faces Hannibal. The Carthaginian elephants charge, massive, unstoppable, or so it seems. The Roman ranks open, let the beasts barrel harmlessly through empty corridors, and the mighty monsters are routed before anyone else bleeds. After that, something wild happens. Within a single human lifetime, elephants vanish from the wars of Europe. By roughly 100 BCE, they're gone. Not phased out, forgotten. The terror weapon, minus its mystique, is just an enormous liability. And not just in ancient history. The world's seen it, before and since. In 1940, the French poured hope and fortune into the Maginot Line, miles of concrete, belief, and steel, supposedly impregnable. Then, adaptation, that eternal foe, outpaces them. The Germans sidestep the wall completely. The lesson? The more spectacular the defense, the more blinding its flaw, right until it collapses overnight. But why does this keep happening? Because every society, every system gets addicted to spectacle-dependent security, national, social, psychological. We cheer the arrival of the new shock weapon. We fund the latest tank, the brightest drone, the most dazzling defense shield, convinced it will win the next war or save the next generation. But we rarely talk about feedback loops, the invisible processes that turn today's innovation into tomorrow's vulnerability. Our belief in the next game changer just hardens our blind spots. It isn't just the armies of Rome or Carthage or the Seleucid Empire who fall for the seduction. It's all of us. When the Seleucids lined up their elephants at Magnesia in 190 BCE, they believed, honestly, they were invincible. So did Carthage at Zama. Ultimate power. Until, in a blink, every advantage flips. The elephants go from asset to liability.
The war chest drains, the empire crumbles.
The stories of these vanished juggernauts become cautionary tales, told long after the original shock has faded. Power always feels solid, like building a fortress taller and taller on sand. At first, every brick seems to make us safer, more unassailable, a little further above the waves. But underneath, the pressure creates fault lines. The sand can't bear it. The higher we go, the deeper the cracks grow. Until one day, sometimes all at once, the whole structure gives way, and history sweeps it into legend. Here's the real question. Is anything different today? Our era's war elephants don't come with tusks and armor. They come as cyber weapons, as artificial intelligence, as ever-evolving tanks and missiles. But the pattern remains. For every dazzling advantage, adaptation lurks in the shadows. What happens when the spectacle fades? When the myth evaporates, and what we thought was unbreakable suddenly isn't even remembered? Will our superweapons go extinct not with a bang, but with a shrug and a swipe of the arm? Swept away by the next idea, the next adaptation, the next vulnerability revealed too late. The truth is, we're all inheritors of tactical extinction. Unless we start looking beyond the spectacle to the system beneath, the invisible, shifting sand, the lesson will repeat itself. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.